Quinones here as always. Don't forget, get social with us at Rich Q on Q, Twitter and IG. Follow me on Facebook and the like. You guys have been fantastic with the engagement on the YouTube channel. So listen, I wanted to dive into the NFL playoffs. I also wanted to get into this notion now where it seems as though everyone and their mothers talking about the officiating in the NFL, and we know how poor the officiating in the NFL is. So now it's all the hot takes. Is the NFL rigged? Is the NFL fixed? I'm not going to try to debunk all these theories because I think everyone has their own viewpoint. Everyone has their own vantage point. Everyone perceives it a different way, especially when you start to talk about these announcers and you start to talk about the bettors and the gambling public. So, a couple schools of thought here. Uh, to me, what's the benefit, right? You talking about ticket sales? No. You talking about ratings? Look at the implosion of ratings. I pulled up the numbers. I'll get to them in a minute. You talking about some of the shady characters well within the NFL ranks? I mean, what's the benefit of these referees, of these officials? If there's a major swing in Vegas, if there's a major monumental line movement, even then you're talking about the sharps, you're talking about the mattress max of the world. There's no fixing, there's no rigging. We can talk about the disparity when it comes to the flags. Kansas City flagged 4 times for 55 yards in the AFC Championship. Cincinnati, I believe it was 7 times for 71. Okay, listen, you want to raise an eyebrow with the Philadelphia Eagles and San Francisco 49ers, 11 for 81, 4 for 34 for the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can talk about those games. You want to put them in a microscope, so be it. Okay, a couple things. We know you can call holding every single solitary time in the NFL. Lane Johnson, is he getting off the snap? I think it was OCU Manura tweeted, you know what? It's not offsides because he's actually jumping. He's timing his, the count, so to speak. Okay, I know it's very, I don't buy into that. I do think there were many times he jumped and you're just not calling it. They're just letting it just go on. The play clock. We saw it in the Giants and the Ravens earlier this year. We saw it in the Seattle game. We saw it in an Atlanta game, right? I'm going to give you that extra second because you're at home. Pass interference. It's almost like it's a discretionary call. It's again, I'll go to the Kansas City game. The horrible PI call on Mike Hilton, right? You go to the 49ers game before Purdy got knocked out of the game, and everyone's talking about, was it a catch? Was it not a catch? Listen, it wasn't a catch. It was clearly a drop by Smith. He had the presence of mind to keep cop and speed it up. I didn't catch it. And shame on Shanahan because nobody conveyed it to him on the sidelines to throw the flag. Because if you throw the flag, that's going to be overturned, and you don't know the series going forward. And who knows if Purdy gets hurt or not. But again, that's not bad officiating. It's a bad call. Yes, no doubt. Absolutely. Yes. It was a lapse, but the expedited replay process failed in that regard. But this is the NFL. If it went the other way, I don't think Niners fans are going to complain. If it went the other way, I don't think Cincinnati fans are going to complain or can't. When it goes in your favor, you're not going to complain. When it goes against you, yes, we all sit there and we all complain. I agree 100%. The NFL, if you go back, the NFL, when they started to have instant replay in 86, then they took it away in 91, then they brought it back in 99. You can go all the way to the Mike Renfro days, the 79-80 AFC title game. Go talk to an old school Houston Oiler fan, right? So I don't believe the NFL is fixed, and I don't believe the NFL is rigged. What I believe is the officiating flat out stinks. It's extremely inconsistent. You want to go to the Kansas City game and talk about the mulligan on third down. And then all of a sudden, we're going to keep the drive alive with the penalty. They still punt it. You want to talk about the bad PI on Hill. And I can tell you they missed a call roughing the passer on Joe Burrow. That's another thing that is, it's almost like subjective. I had people on Twitter saying, well, you can't throw the flag late in that game on that kid, Osia, forgive me for butchering his name, the young kid that got flagged for knocking Patrick Mahomes already when he was out of bounds. Again, listen, It's by rule, the definition, that is roughing the passer, period. Period. And it's unfortunate because the kid didn't understand um, situational football. It's just not a good thing. You have to be well within, the restraint. You have to understand down distance where you're at in the game. He doesn't make that play. If he doesn't touch Patrick Mahomes, I don't care if it's Joe Blow, Patrick Mahomes, they're going to throw the flag there. I don't want to hear this complaining. Why are you doing it at that moment? Because again, by rule, by definition, and trust me, I can sit here and bark about a ton of bad plays in the NFL over the last 15, 20 years. The pass interference, the leading with the head, the holding, a lot of that is subjective. Now, I'll tell you where it did bother me in the San Francisco game, the expedited replay. Isn't it there so you can expedite the play and see? Clearly, Smith dropped it. But again, what do we see in the NFL? Guys say, hurry up, get to the line, snap it. There's nothing you can do. I blame Shanahan in that regard because if you know that is a questionable whether he dropped it or caught it or not, it's the NFC Championship game. You leave nothing to chance. You throw the hanky, you throw the red flag, and you challenge it. Whether you win the challenge or not, it changes the complexion of the game, right? And then all of a sudden, now if it's 0-0, maybe Purdy's not dropping back to pass, right? Maybe they're calling different plays. Everything has that domino effect. And it was just unfortunate that the kid got knocked out so early because it was a really tough road for the 49ers to overcome. But I can still go back. You guys want to throw ticket sales. The NFL does a pretty good job selling these games. You want to talk about ratings? Well, I pulled up the ratings, and because everyone was going back and forth on me on social media and Twitter. So again, I have the numbers to substantiate it. When everyone's talking about the ratings in the NFL, CBS averaged 53.12 million viewers for Kansas City, the Kansas City and Cincinnati AFC Championship game. Obviously, Kansas City won it late on a field goal. The telecast was up 6% over the same broadcast window in 2022, which was 50.23 million viewers for the NFC Championship game. Then you look at Fox. So for Fox NFC Championship game, 11% over last year's AFC title game, 47.85, which had the afternoon slot. It was the biggest audience for either conference championship game since 2019, with 53.92 million people watched the AFC Championship. Fox drew 47.5. So again, we're watching. Remember a couple years ago with the whole Kaepernick and the players kneeling, nobody's going to watch the NFL anymore. Nobody's going to invest in the NFL. No one's going to spend money on the NFL and all these commercials and advertising. How long did that last? How long? Because the people that claim they don't watch the NFL, they're full of crap. They're BS. They're flat. I don't watch the NFL. You're lying. You watch it, and probably out of maybe 10 to 15%, you guys probably bet whether it's office pools, block pools, or a couple units here and there, whether you're going to the window or doing the apps, you do that as well. So say that crap, sell some swamp land, go hang out with Eric Estrada and sell me some swamp land in Florida. Take that for another day. The bottom line is this: go through the history of the NFL, especially roughing the passer, right? You can go back to the days of Gastineau in 86 versus the Browns. You can go back to a couple years ago, the AFC Championship game, right? New England, Kansas City. You want to talk about that game? We can go back to that game. You can talk about the coin flip in 98, the failed Mary in 2012, the Calvin Johnson, the Des Bryant catch or no catch. I mean, I still go back to 89, Sheldon White, bad pass interference call, divisional matchup against the Rams, and Flipper Anderson against the Giants. So the refereeing and the officiating has always been so inconsistent. But again, I ask you, what's the benefit? What does the league have to gain? Why? Because you guys think they're going to push certain markets? Is that where we're at? Is that where we're at? So again, you got to call it the way you see it. They would much rather have the Eagles represent the NFC than the 49ers. I'm sorry. They it's just talk market, right? I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. But that game wasn't, the officiating didn't affect the outcome of the game. There were some bad calls, some no calls, but ultimately, look how that game went about its business in a rout. Kansas City, Cincinnati. Again, I can go back to last year's AFC Championship game. I can go back to the Super Bowl where there were some calls that could have went the other way, shouldn't have went the other way. This is not the NBA. Years ago in the NBA, you know why, guys? Go back to the 88 NBA Finals and watch Detroit against the Los Angeles Lakers, game seven, where um, you had Lambeer, the ticky tack foul on Kareem, I believe it was, in Los Angeles, right? And the big man went to the line and sank two of them. The old heads will tell you, you know why they called it? They called it because of what he was doing 3, 4, 5 plays down the floor earlier. The makeup calls. You see that in NBA. We know about the point shaving. We know about the scandals in college. We know about the Donaghy's. It's too hard to do in the NFL. It really is. It really, really is. And you have to wonder the risk to reward, right? Is it worth the is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So I believe that the NFL has a problem because the problem now with the NFL is the reality is this the perception that these games are, quote, rigged or fixed. That's a bad look. That's a bad perception. The NFL never wanted to get in bed with gambling, but yet they relocated a team to where? Vegas. The NFL never wanted to get in bed with sports betting, but yet now you have teams and now you have broadcasts where you're seeing the lines, you're seeing the bottom scroll, you're seeing shoulder programming, you're seeing them brought to you by, you're seeing this, you're seeing that. Listen, I think the NFL made a problem. The NFL created this problem when they decided ultimately they kept denying the fact that people bet on games. They kept denying the fact that people bet on games. They wanted to be dismissive about it. They wanted to pretend like it didn't it wasn't legit. You know, there's no full transparency, but the numbers speak for themselves. Look how much money is bet on these games. So that's why, again, I just think there's too much to risk in this situation. The NBA, you can call it ticky tack fouls. You can miss a couple calls, a guy traveling here and there, taking some bunny steps. The NFL, it's just the officiating, in my estimation, stinks. It's extremely inconsistent and it's never going to change. I've had this conversation with my buddies for years. I've had this conversation with contemporaries for years. You can call holding every single solitary play, but they also want to speed up the game. Why do they want to speed up the game to some extent? Because they want to squeeze in their breaks, because they want to squeeze in the advertising. Why do they want the game to be a little more wide open, entertaining, more points, a little more shootout? They want that to keep the eyeballs on the product, but they're not doing it where it's so obvious and blatant where they're screwing a team. There are some calls that are just blatantly missed. There are some calls that are blatantly not whistled, not the flag is not thrown. We see it every single Sunday during the NFL season. How many times are you guys watching the games with your friends? Or you're sitting at a bar and you're watching the game and it's third down and it's an incomplete pass. You guys sit here like this, or you're waiting for an announcer to say third down incomplete and there's no flag. That's what they say now. You'll hear it with Eagle, you'll hear it with Nance, you'll hear it with Burkhart, and there's no flag because the assumption is there's going to be a flag thrown. It stinks. It sucks. It's horrible. It's tough to even want to handicap these games or bet on these games. It's an eyesore at times watching these games because, like I said, some of the calls the other day, I mean, the Smith, he did not catch the football. So the NFL, that expedited replay system failed the 49ers at that moment, right? Um, but then I can go back and say there were missed calls X, Y, and Z. Cincinnati, Kansas City, they missed a blatant roughing the passer call when Burrow got driven down on the ground. I mean, by definition, that is roughing the passer, but they didn't throw the flag. I went back a couple of years ago and I think I pulled it up in my notes somewhere. The Flowers call, right? It was roughing the passer, Kansas City versus New England, and it was on Brady, and they did not throw the flag, and then they threw the flag when Flowers hit Patrick Mahomes. So I mean, it's just remember when the NFL went away from instant replay, they did it for a couple years, and then they went away in '91, then they brought it back in '99. So, like I said, this I don't believe that it's rigged. I don't believe that it's fixed. I just believe that these officials, if they if you want to get it right, you're going to have to maybe slow down the game, right? And I don't know if viewers want every play, every flag to be replayed. I don't know if we want the eye in the sky. We want New York to review everything. But again, what was really a piss poor look was no expedited replay on the Smith play. And again, I also blame Shanahan because throw the red flag, you got nothing to lose. It's the NFC Championship. And then also, what's a bad look was basically let's give you the mulligan for the extra down, the third play down in the Kansas City. And it evens out too. That's the other thing. For every bad play that happens for your team, you're going to get a couple of plays where they had no business throwing the flag for you and it works out in your favor. That's all I'm saying. So listen, I'm the biggest conspiracy theorist out there. I don't believe that the league is fixed. I do believe there's some questionable calls. I think the refs have to be held more accountable. I always suggest that you grade these guys out, and the best 3 or 4, those are the ones that are allowed the privilege to do the playoffs and then ultimately in the Super Bowl. But then the counter as well, these guys don't have cohesiveness, consistency, working as a group, as a team together. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. But just a couple thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below as well. Don't forget, follow me on social at Rich Q on Q. We got 2 shows of BYP coming up tonight in the can. Jovan Alford's going to join us. We'll talk NFL, Eagles, Lloyd Vance as well, NFL playoffs, and I'll ask him if he thinks the league is rigged. Tweet at me at Rich Q on Q. Have a good Sports Tuesday. As always, thanks for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, engage, comment, subscribe to Rich Q on Q.